I always wonder with players like Pierce as well, where his strength is like breaking 5 different tackles and just kind of going on his own script, and where the coaches just prefer, like, oh no, Devin Singletary's going to do exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's not going to put a Superman cape on like that.
Flow with the play and hit the hole. That's going to be Joe Mixon as well. So
I do that a lot too.
Yeah, flow with the play and hit the hole.
Flow with the play.
Yeah, I would actually say you're more Pierce.
Yeah,
you're much more.
I grind it out.
You're looking to break 5 tackles.
I'm looking to break 5 tackles.
You don't follow the blockers at all.
None whatsoever. I do my own thing. I just and I disappoint. I am
I disappoint.
Yeah,
we didn't go that far.
Yeah, it's fine.
Damien Pierce and Matthew Berry. We disappoint.
Yeah.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. Fellows, a lot has happened since we were last on this desk in NFL free agency.
Jay got back to his roots with the Magpies. Go Pies.
Started off 0-3, unfortunately, in our title defense, which isn't good because there's only 22 games in the season.
I was going to say, how many games in a season?
Yeah, it's 22 games.
You know what? 19-3 the hard way.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly
go.
right. Let's go Pies.
Let's go Pies.
Support the team through good and bad. It's bad at the moment. I think they celebrated their title win for 6 months. So,
championship hangover?
Yeah, very much.
Like an actual hangover?
You know what? Maybe the Pies will be the AFL version of Grambling State. Baby, because Grambling State drinks free at the happy hour today. Their first appearance ever in the NCAA tournament. And what do? Down 14 to Montana State. They come back and they all drink free here. At least the players on the team that are over 21, of course.
Right.
You know, they might coach. Yeah. Anyone that supports Grambling State.
All of us supporters.
All of our supporters. Producer Damien, who took them at +4. He cashed out last night. Exactly as well. He loves his Grambling State.
Just a funny name.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, it's a great story. March Madness is upon us, it's all about underdogs. Yes. And so I always feel like this is my time. I always feel like I've been an underdog my entire life.
You're the Cinderella story.
I'm a Cinderella story. No
one
believed in me.
Yeah.
No one believed in me at all.
How is this guy here?
How is this guy here? Honestly, that question comes up quite a bit. Just check any thread on Reddit. Seriously.
From where?
Yeah, exactly.
How?
You are the Grambling
Wait,
State.
why is this guy on my TV? Wait, now he's on Sunday Night Football? What the hell?
Yes.
Come on, America.
You are the Grambling State of American sports media.
You know what? I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Go
Always
Pies.
covering +4.
Yeah, exactly. I am. I'm always like a 4-point underdog, and I always just think, I beat the spread. People are like, I grind it out.
Yes.
I'm like Dameon Pierce.
Yes.
Back to the Dameon Pierce comp.
Yeah, of course.
Break 5 tackles, fall forward for 2 yards.
One of the problems with us doing a show only once a week is I have just everything.
Too much.
I need to get it out.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem is like right now I'm just doing the show for my 12-year-old daughters who are like sitting there on TikTok bored out of their minds. So it's just about an hour a day. I just get it all out. My poor daughters and my wife.
They have to listen to you.
Yeah, it's awful.
You're like, why are you in the house 6 days a week?
Dad, stop.
Yeah.
Stop, you're embarrassing me.
Yes.
Dad, I'm trying to play Fortnite. Dad, I'm on TikTok. Dad, I'm chatting with my friends. They can hear you.
You just walk room to room looking for somebody
to
be entertained by you.
But I don't think you understand. Keenan Allen's on the Bears. Come on, girls.
For a 4th-round pick.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, we do have a lot to get through today. We'll get through all of the moves. Love Hate is back. Love Hate for free agency.
Is back for free agency. It is. It's free now on Rotoworld.com. Of course, always free. We'll get to that later in the show. So that's great. Oh, by the way, I made an appearance. I committed podultery. You know what I mean? And podultery, of course, is like adultery, but just with podcasts.
It's a cardinal sin.
It's a cardinal sin. It's like you cheat. Yeah. Now, I know you guys understand this because the two of you commit podultery. Like you guys are swingers.
Yes.
Is
Every
what you
other
guys
hour.
are. 1,000%.
Yes,
You're over on Sims and Brother from Another.
It's like 1969 with listening to the White Album.
You're at what is it? What's Club? It's not Club 69. What is it?
Definitely not Club 69.
Studio 64. That was it. Thank you very much.
Backup producer Pete is all over it.
Oh no.
But yeah, you guys are basically like Club 69 because you're all over the place every other podcast. God forbid you ever spend any time on the actual show that pays you.
Loose morals.
Yeah, very
Rogers
loose morals.
Croucher.
Very loose morals, exactly. You guys are doing love-ins in San Francisco, just all around the NBC Sports building, all various podcasts. But I dipped my toe in the the other water as it were, similar to you guys. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll throw my key in the hat, see who picks it out.
At Club 69.
Yeah, Club 69.
Dip your toes in the water at Club 69.
Turns out,
198.
yeah, and I made my debut on Bet the Edge.
Whoa!
Now part of the Bet the Edge cinematic universe.
It's only half cheating because Jay is on it. It's only a half cheat.
Yeah, it's sort of a.
What did they ask you on Bet the Edge?
I don't even
No
remember.
football's going on.
Jay did the interview, so it was just kind of like, how are you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What
And then
movies do you want to discuss today?
Yeah, it was just something. It was just like
pop culture.
Well, it was sort of like ask me about my bracket.
That's
I try to be very honest with the audience. I think if there's one thing that what little appeal I have, I think if there's one piece of appeal that I have is that I think the audience knows that I don't BS them. Like they sort of, this is, for better or for worse, I am what I am, right? So I'm not trying to say that like I'm some crazy college basketball expert coming on there and like, I looked at the Ken Palm ratings and, no, whatever. Like I filled out a bracket like everyone else, like, screw Michigan State. It's basically, I grew up in College Station, Giga Maggie's.
You hate East Lansing.
Yeah, and I hate it with a fiery passion.
Yes. So Michigan State rooting for their downfall.
Yeah, well, I mean, like,
here we go.
And
careful. Careful.
I'll just say this. I was anti-East Lansing before they embraced a World War II dictator. You know what I mean? So
we're back.
Yeah, all right.
And we went into great depth on that. On
that particular subject. You can get into. You see that.
Well, I'm glad you joined the cinematic universe of Bet the Edge. Cinematic universe is the rivals Dune.
Yes.
The Dark Knight trilogy. Yeah, no, it was good to have you on, Matthew.
Yeah.
Good
all
to hear your
the
thoughts
Avengers.
Yeah. Good to hear your thoughts about Jamal Shedd and Houston's late game offense and other in-depth topics.
We went really in depth. Who else was on that show? It was a bunch of us.
Imagine Drew
Dinsick was on it after you. Robbie Hummel, who played for Purdue, played for the Timberwolves in the NBA as well. He's more qualified than you.
I would think so.
Yeah, so it's good.
I would hope so.
There's a good balance. There's a good balance of people who know about college basketball and people who don't.
You don't. There you go. You get all flavors on Bet the Edge. Exactly. That's what happens when you have a key party and you throw them all in a hat and you just don't know who you're getting.
Never know who you're going to get.
You don't know if you're getting a 10 or a 2. It is what it is. That's the brilliance, from what I understand, of those kind of parties.
Only at Club 69. Let's jump into the Rotoworld player news because there's been a lot of player movement across the NFL, especially at wide receiver. And you kind of teased that, Matthew. The Bears acquired Keenan Allen from the Chargers for the mere price of a 4th-round pick.
You know what? Not only has this been I think one underrated piece of this entire free agency, and it's been crazy. Like it's been, even by crazy NFL standards, I feel like the free agency period in terms of both the trades and player movement has been really nutty. But to me, the nuttiest thing, and I don't really see a lot of people talking about this specific thing, is it's like player, maybe I'm just way off, but just some of these trades in terms of what some people are getting and then other people getting. I get it that Keenan Allen is both expensive and, as NFL players go, on the older side.
Yep.
But he's Keenan freaking Allen. And to get him for a 4, that strikes me as, I know that the Chargers were cash strapped and they needed to make some sort of move, but Connor, I mean, a 4 strikes me as really a really good deal for the Chargers.
It's wild. I mean, this is a franchise legend.
For the Bears, a really good deal for the Bears. I'm surprised the Chargers weren't able to get more than a 4 for Keenan Allen.
And there's 2 trickle effects of this, right? The fact is Justin Herbert is now going into the season without Mike Williams, without Keenan Allen, into a new offense. And I'll spin it like this, guys. Jay, this feels like one of the greatest situations I've ever seen for a first overall pick quarterback walking into. Caleb Williams is walking into an offense that he's got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, an offensive line that's starting to gel together. There are not a lot of number one overall.
Kmet and Gerald Everett, too. Did they get where'd Everett go?
Yeah.
They got Gerald Everett, too, right?
So they have deep at tight end, deep at running back, deep at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean,
and they have the 9th overall pick after they take Caleb Williams.
They might have the
overall.
best defense in the NFL as well. At least they did for stretches towards the back end of the season. So, yeah, I think the sneaky thing of this offseason is now the NFC North is just completely loaded. Like, that might be the best division in football after being kind of not a laughing stock, but not a great division for a couple of years. But, I mean, Connor, you think Caleb Williams is going to come in and just be a very good quarterback from day one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and you see there, by the way, Keenan Allen went to Caleb Williams' pro day at USC. Like, we don't see him at Drake May's pro day. Like, Keenan Allen didn't pop into Jaden Daniels, saying, hey, now obviously he's there with the Chargers in L.A. and the pro day was at USC, so it's not that far down the freeway for him. But still, Keenan Allen's no dummy. You know, it's like, I know what's happening here. Let me go support my new quarterback.
Yeah, this is an awesome situation for Caleb Williams. It really enhances Caleb Williams' situation in fantasy for a rookie. I mean, considering who he's going to throw to now. And the fact is, yeah, the division is really good, but it's not like every defense in this division is loaded where you think he's going to struggle out of the gate too.
No. And the schedule is favorable enough given that they didn't finish top 2. I think they might have finished 4th in the division in the end. But no, it should be a great situation for Caleb Williams. It's kind of rough for Justin Fields as well, who had a really bad situation basically his entire time in Chicago. And then as soon as he leaves, they get Keenan
It's
Allen.
like, you know what happens is like, and this is like, and I can speak to this because like, you know, I've been divorced, right? So, you know, I remember, you know, and my ex-wife and I, we both got married very young. And so, you know, we split up and it was just, we just sort of grew apart. There was no drama and we're still friends to this day. But I remember, like, I don't know, we had a lunch like just 3 months after we had divorced or something like that, just to sort of like check in with each other and everything like that. And there was some paper that we needed to sign or something like that. And I just remember, and she walked in, I was just like, whoa, you babed up, you know? And she's like, you bet I'm on the, you know, and like, you know, she laughed and she's like, yeah, I'm single now, you know, and like, so that's what happened. I feel like, you know, Justin, I was just like, whoa, where was this when we were married? You know what I mean? Like,
the Bears got in shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. They went on a diet. They're doing the crunches.
Yes.
Absolutely. Justin Fields was like, whoa,
Yep.
Whoa,
100%.
where were all these new outfits when we were together?
Yeah.
What's going on?
They get new uniforms in a new stadium at some point.
Yeah, like I feel bad for Justin Fields on many levels, but that's what happened here. I don't remember, usually when a team takes a quarterback at number 1 overall, it's because they're terrible and you know, and there's not a lot there, and so you're just sort of coming into this bad situation. I don't remember a number 1 overall pick at quarterback coming into a situation with as much loaded talent as Caleb Williams is getting. So credit to Ryan Poles and the Bears in terms of like, hey, we're going to do everything possible to make sure Caleb Williams works.
Yep. Like Baker Mayfield had a really good offensive line in Cleveland, but he didn't have the weapons. He didn't have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. So, yeah, it'll be, and I think that, you know, Caleb Williams should be able to provide fantasy value from the get-go. And I think that he's probably going to be good enough where that team can, like, they have realistic expectations, I think, to like win the division in the first year that he's there.
At least challenge for a wild card.
There's no question about that.
Some more wide receiver movement. Hollywood Brown signs a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. Base value $7 million, up to $11 million with incentives. Matthew, just kind of an ideal fit for, you know, an undersized but excellent vertical threat in the NFL.
This is a better NFL move than fantasy-wise. I actually think this is a downgrade for Hollywood Brown fantasy-wise because he is going to be, at best, the 3rd option on the Chiefs offense after Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. I don't think he supplants Rashee Rice as the number 1 wide receiver, right? And to me what he is he's a rich man's version of MVS. You know what I mean? Like they've, ever since Tyreek Hill left, you know, or like they drafted Mecole Hardman, you know, they got MVS, they, you know, Justin Watson as well. They've always tried to find these vertical guys that can get down, that can sort of take the top off the offense because, of course, Mahomes has this cannon of an arm. And so Hollywood Brown, who does have a much more robust route tree than MVS or something like that, but the fact is that, like, I think it was Denny Carter that tweeted this out. I apologize if it wasn't. But I think Denny tweeted something like, I can't wait to see how many pass interference calls Marquise Brown gets for the Chiefs next year, that's what's going to happen. Like, it's a great move for the Chiefs and for the Chiefs offense and for Mahomes, like to have a guy like Hollywood Brown. But he goes from Arizona, where he was the main, he was getting a massive target share, especially once DeAndre Hopkins was out of the lineup for Arizona, to now Kansas City, where again, like, they're going to take a couple of deep shots and he'll have some good moments, like somewhere between Juju Smith-Schuster 2 years ago and MVS last year. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like a great move for Hollywood Brown's fantasy value.
And to, you know, piggyback off your point, I think this is a team that is going to draft a wide receiver. I know they still need help along the offensive line as well, but if you add one more wide receiver in the first 3 rounds from this draft and a great wide receiver class, that eats into his target share as well.
Yeah, I think it just makes everything easier on the offense. The issue, like, the Chiefs just never threw deep at all last season. When they did, it just, like, visually it looked strange. It's like, I haven't seen that before. And Mahomes, like, that's what he did when he had Tyreek Hill. Like, this has been taken out of his game because he hasn't had the personnel. Now Marquise Brown will take the top off the defense. It'll make it easier for Rashee Rice. And to me, like, the betting upshot of this is Patrick Mahomes is plus 650 to win MVP. Like, it's just ludicrous. There is no, that means that Patrick Mahomes is like a 13% chance to win MVP. There's no way he's not more than a 13% chance. He's the best quarterback of all time. He's in his prime. He has weapons now, and he should just be like plus 300 every single year.
The fact that Kelsey's coming back, second year of Rashee Rice, they add Marquise Brown, Andy Reid is back as well. That, yes, of course, like the division is getting a little bit tougher, but still, I do think it's worth noting, though, again, like we know Mahomes likes to spread it around. Last year, Kelsey and Rashee Rice, the only two pass catchers on Kansas City to see at least 55 targets. And so Hollywood Brown coming off of a down year, again, he's an improvement over everyone else they have in that receiver room, but I just don't see him having the kind of fantasy success he's had in Arizona or Baltimore where he got, I think, a bigger target share than what he's going to get. He's going to have 4 or 5 huge games for the Chiefs. Like, when he connects on 1 or 2 of those bombs, it's going to be awesome. But trying to predict those games are going to be tough because I think Rashee Rice is going to have a monster year next year. And I don't think Hollywood Brown coming in affects that, would be my argument, especially because we know Kelsey's not going to play a ton of snaps.
Yep.
And Andy Reid literally told me at the Combine that Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce basically have the same route tree. That they so that they mix and match them so that they can't be double teamed or everything like that. But basically, they do the same. Rice also can play outside, but they like to have Rice inside doing a lot of the same stuff that Kelce does.
Yep.
That's what Reid literally told me to my face. And why would he lie?
Sure, it was
He's a
recorded.
2-time Super Bowl champion.
It was recorded.
It was recorded.
In a
It was on
visual
tape. It was the definitive Andy Reid interview.
Yes.
Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, everyone's
Did not win Coach of the Year, Andy Reid.
He did not win.
Yes.
He did not.
It's very
win
unclear who
I'm
won
still
that.
not sure who won Coach of the Year.
We have a research team working on
This
it.
not wasn't Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
Yeah, that much I know.
All right.
It wasn't.
Another big addition in free agency at wide receiver, Mike Williams signs with the Jets as the Jets were looking for a wide receiver to pair with Garrett Wilson. But it didn't
I think
just
you mean
take...
Alan Lazard. But
and Alan Lazard, of course, still there somehow. And it didn't just take money to get this deal done. It took a little extra from NYJ Matt on Twitter. Watch this.
Am I trying this right now? Ooh. It's good. This one got the deal sign right here.
That was a Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwich from Morristown, New Jersey, sent on Uber Eats by NYJ Matt to Mike Williams when he was visiting the Jets. Have either of you ever had, some people call it pork roll, a Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwich?
No. I have not.
Oh, man. I'll bring him to the set one day.
Okay.
Your life will never be the same. Clearly, that was a genuine reaction from Mike Williams. And that sandwich had been sitting there probably for about 6 hours.
Right, but it's still, it's
that delicious.
That delicious. I have heard tales of its prowess.
It's a
How
New Jersey legend.
How delicious do you think the Jets' offense will be now, Connor? Had a pretty good offseason.
I see
The
what you did
offensive
there.
line.
Yeah.
For Mike Williams. Maybe some holes for Breece Hall to run into
They'll
now.
actually get back to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
A necessary addition. I think it's, there's two sides to this. One, receivers coming off an ACL are never the same the next year. They're never the top guy. But the Jets don't need Mike Williams to be the top guy. They need Garrett Wilson to be the top guy. So this gives them a big-bodied, 6'4", jump ball target for Aaron Rodgers that, how many times do we say this? We said it with Aaron Rodgers, we said it with Tyron Smith, we say it with Mike Williams now. They got to keep him on the field for this to be effective.
I don't know who tweeted it, but it's one of the social media accounts.
Just say Danny Carter.
No,
NFL memes.
No, it might have been. I love those the NFL memes guys. I don't know who runs that account, but whoever does crushes it every single time. But no, this wasn't it. But like some corporate account, because they all do this. And we do it as well here at NBC and Rotoworld. But somebody put it out, a little graphic of Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, and Mike Williams now. And it's like, who's stopping this offense? And Breece Hall. And then somebody tweeted back just a picture of the turf.
Right. Right.
It's
fair.
Which is fair. And it's just like, that's who's stopping them potentially, right? Is this the turf monster?
Wait till David Bakhtiari signs with the Jets.
Oh, my God, right? But, listen. Mike Williams is a great player. What's positive about, in terms of the ACL, to your point, separation's never been a big part of his game. That's a guy, he's a jump ball guy. He's a 50-50 ball guy. Aaron Rodgers is not somebody who needs to, quote, throw you open. So assuming he comes back healthy, I think after Garrett Wilson and, of course, Allen Lazard, he'll be a great number 3 wide receiver.
Can't forget Allen Lazard.
For the New York Jets. Does Allen Lazard make the team this year, or do they
I think they would pay a team to take him. I think they would send a pick with him.
Oh, of course. But I'm just saying, he's there because of Rodgers.
Yes. But even Rodgers after last year has to be like, oh boy, I don't know about this anymore. It was that bad.
Do you think Rodgers just keeps him around in case anything goes down? He's like his
money's guaranteed.
He's like Shohei's interpreter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like you never
Fall
know.
guy.
Fall guy.
Something goes wrong at night. I need a guy that.
Yeah.
The Jets cut Allen Lazard because things got out of hand in the city last
Yeah,
night.
you never know.
Ipe Lazard.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
Ipe. That's what we should call him. Ipe Lazard.
I knew Otani would find his way to this show.
I'm just
20-minute mark?
Remember, I think it was Chris Carter that spoke to the players.
Said you
at
need
the
a fall
NFL.
guy.
You need a fall guy.
Right.
You need a fall guy.
Lazard's a $10 million fall guy.
Yeah.
There's
easily.
a very real chance that he is kept on the roster. for that and reasons
of course. Do you think, or do you think Lazard's just around because he'll be like Secretary of Agriculture? Because when Rodgers is a heartbeat away.
They find him a job there,
Yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly.
He keeps getting these higher and higher paid jobs. It's like, how does this keep happening?
Yeah.
Alan Lazard's going to be the president of the United
Yes.
States in like 4 years. You watch.
Exactly.
How did this happen?
All right. Can everyone come to order? Press Secretary Randall Cobb is ready to address the nation.
And Billy Turner.
Yeah.
Billy Turner, Secretary of Defense, Billy Turner.
Exactly. Just be all the.
I guarantee if you're Aaron Rodgers, your thought is not that after last year that Alan Lazard was bad. It's like, no, I wasn't there to throw him the ball.
Probably.
He's actually still good.
Yes.
Yeah, he'll still be good. Let's give him
Although
another
this
year.
signing kind of indicates everyone else is
Sure.
not in line with
Yeah.
that. They gave
Yeah.
Mike Williams up to $15 million on a one-year deal. I mean, he is the, at minimum, number 2.
But he was. Don't you think also, Mike? And the Jets clearly needed a wide receiver, right? Now it is obviously it's a deep draft,
And they'll draft one, too.
And they will, of course, they will. But the fact of the matter is Rodgers traditionally has not loved rookie wide receivers.
Right.
He's 40 years old. Like he's come back from the Achilles. The Jets need to be all in for this year, and so, yes, they'll draft a rookie, but they need a veteran presence beyond Garrett Wilson for Rodgers to throw to, and so. I felt like at the time of the signing, again, they could have gotten Keenan Allen for 4 apparently, but but it felt like of the free agents available, Mike Williams was again, because T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, like all the guys that we thought were going to be available.
Mike Evans.
They
would've
Evans,
liked
all
him a lot.
re-signed. I mean, it was basically Mike Williams or Calvin Ridley, and if they didn't want to do an extension again, because they're sort of all in for this year, it makes sense. Hey, who can we get that's a veteran that's really good on a 1-year deal? And so that's what they did.
And they were in on Jerry Jeudy, who is absolutely a worse player than Mike Williams.
1,000%.
Like, definitively a worse player. And speaking of Jerry Jeudy,
Mike Williams' only
really
issue
good.
is health.
Yes, he's
that's his
very
only
good.
issue. Like he's when he's on the field, he's great.
Yep.
Like Mike Williams was like I want to say 8th overall. I know he was a top 10 pick, right? This
is quite a bit now.
mean,
I'm
but-
trying to think. He
I'll
was
tell you.
definitely a first-rounder.
If Brandon Staley didn't play him in that stupid, meaningless game against Denver in Week 18 2 years ago, then they beat the Jags in that playoff game because they just needed like one more score, and Mike Williams would have been there to give them that. So, it's been difficult with injuries, but yeah, if he is out there, I will say the Jets have to have the widest range of outcomes of any team
far.
in NFL history. I'm ready for this.
far.
Ready for everyone to get hurt and the team to win 4 games. Also, could see them winning the Super Bowl. Like anything is possible.
1,000%.
It's all about how they manage the workload and health of all of these guys, all the way down to Breece Hall.
Feels like it ends poorly, right?
Well,
There's just too many guys.
I've lived this life. You don't have to ask me.
Just because it's the Jets, but
Murphy's Law.
but yeah, I mean, like if the defense is still gonna be very good. It's if the offense stays healthy,
They need to be
huge if.
average. That's the bar they need to clear, the offense, because they were dreadful last year, and they won 7 games.
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, again, like a year ago, this division looked a lot tougher. Like Buffalo right now doesn't look nearly as tough as it did a year ago. Miami doesn't look. Miami didn't.
Yeah.
Like Miami won the offseason, and this was going to be the year the Bills became the Bills. This is all a year ago, and obviously none of that came to fruition.
Yep.
And so like. There's certainly more heading into this season. I feel like there are more questions around the Bills and the Dolphins than there were last season, and so the Jets legitimately have a chance of obviously winning that division.
It's got to be wide open on the odds board. I imagine the Bills are definitely the favorite, but
they're the favorite. They're like plus 130, and then the Jets and the Dolphins are bunched up behind them. And it's like no one has any idea what the Jets are going to be. Like, what's Rodgers going to be? Is Rodgers going to be like the 7th best quarterback, or is he just dumb? Like, no one has any idea what he looks like.
It's going to be Tyrod Taylor by week 8.
Yeah. Well, that's actually handy that they have Tyrod. They have like a real backup where if Rodgers does miss a couple games, can kind of steady the ship. As opposed to the Zach Wilson.
Right. But another guy that's hurt a lot, but effective when he plays.
Yeah.
So, all right, we brought up Jerry Jeudy. We already talked about Jerry Jeudy getting traded to the Browns, but what had not happened yet, guys, was he got a 3-year contract extension, $41 million guaranteed for Jerry Jeudy.
That's Alan Lazard money.
That's more. Can you believe that?
Here's why this is fantasy relevant. I am not the biggest Jerry Jeudy fan. Certainly fantasy-wise. He seems to, throughout his NFL career, he's been sort of allergic to the end zone. He is certainly not, after lighting the world on fire at Alabama, Connor, he is certainly disappointed in the pros in terms of the expectations coming in to the league. I think it's fair to say, right?
Easily for a first-round pick. I mean, look at CeeDee Lamb in that draft. I mean, yeah.
I mean, and so I don't think, whether he had a good quarterback or bad quarterback, like, Cortland Sutton was able to produce in all those offenses where Jerry Jeudy was not. Having said that, while we don't think he's good, and certainly fantasy-wise, I think, because he was a trendy sleeper for a lot of people last year, not me, but he was a trendy sleeper for a lot of people last year. Feels like the bloom is off the rose in the world of fantasy football. But the Cleveland Browns think he's a star. Given this amount of money makes you think that, like, even though we don't like Jerry Jeudy, the Browns really do, because this is a real contract.
A very real contract. I mean, obviously the total's up to 58, but the $41 million guaranteed across 3 years is big-time money. This is big-time money right here. And you look at what's interesting is, what would you rather have? And this isn't meant to pile on the Browns, who clearly love Jerry Jeudy. But Keenan Allen, 1 year left on his deal, going for a 4th-round pick to the Bears. Mike Williams gets up to $15 million. It's going to be a lot less than that on a 1-year deal for the Jets. And then you look at Jeudy getting traded to the Browns, and you're taking on $41 million guaranteed, which you didn't have to do.
I guess the argument is just he's younger than those other guys.
That's very
obviously,
fair.
and that
half as productive.
He's got one season in his NFL career, one season with more than 3 touchdowns. And I understand you can argue some that's about but also that, like, that's a skill. Getting into the end zone, getting yourself in scoring position, targets are earned. And so being open, especially when you're in close, like, that's a skill. And I get that he's not the size of a Cortland Sutton or a Mike Williams or whatever, but
that's
still.
The problem.
But but
one-dimensional.
Right. I do think that as we sort of look at the Cleveland Browns passing game, certainly if you're drafting, you feel better about, not you, but the Browns, certainly pecking order-wise, it does seem like it's Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and then Elijah Moore, right? And then pour all my Cedric Tillman dynasty shares away.
Yeah, same.
Thanks, Oh, well. But I still think pass catcher-wise, I'd rather have Cooper, I'd rather have David Njoku, like just in terms of an overall, than Jerry Jeudy. And I would rather and I think what this will also do is this will certainly depress Elijah Moore's ADP, who, like, they got him some creative looks last year as well. It seemed like he kind of found himself a little bit in Cleveland last year. So I think I'd probably rather take like a last-round flyer on Elijah Moore than, wherever Jerry Jeudy's going to go. Because, by the way, we still don't know if Watson's going to be any good.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, he showed flashes towards the end. And the thing is, like, the last time we saw Deshaun Watson, literally the last time on the field, he's going 14 for 14 in the second half against Baltimore with a fractured shoulder and a high ankle sprain. The best defense in the NFL, arguably, well, they were the best team in the regular season. Now, I think if you're making the case for Jeudy, one, he's 24 years old and he was the 15th pick in the draft. All the physical attributes are still there.
It is crazy to think he's 24.
He's 24 years old. Now, he turns 25 in like 3 weeks, but still, he's 24 right now.
It feels like he's been around forever, is the point.
And here have been his starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Drew Lock, Jeff Driscoll, Brett Rippon, Philip Lindsay in the COVID game against the Saints.
Wide receiver Philip Lindsay,
Teddy Bridgewater.
No, it wasn't. It was Kendall
Hilton.
Yeah, Kendall Hilton, but they lined up with Lindsay so much in the Wildcat that he like statistically counts as the starting quarterback.
But yeah,
a skill player as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And then Russell Wilson, who never threw over the middle and seemed to have more of a connection with Cortland Sutton. I also think, one, Brown's amazing offensive line. There's going to be more time for Jeudy's routes to develop. I think probably just a better offensive ecosystem in general. And then 2, the Browns, for whatever you think about them signing Deshaun Watson, they have been a very smart organization, very analytically driven.
Sure.
They make the right decisions typically in terms of unearthing players. So they
have the
see
coach of
something
the year.
in Jeudy. They have the 2-time coach of the year, Kevin Stefanski.
Where were you? Where
People
were you
forget
guys?
this.
Thanks. Yeah, people do forget it. People forget it often.
Yes, some people even at this circular table forget
Correct.
it. So I don't know. I wouldn't give up on Jeudy just because he's
That's
24
fair.
years old.
That's fair. The quarterback laundry list of
Everything
injuries
you
is scary,
everything
though.
you say is completely solid and logical and makes total sense, and I get it, and I'm still going to be out on him next year. And you know, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I hear you. He's had bad quarterbacks, but again, Cortland Sutton's been able to produce with all those quarterbacks, right?
Yep.
Like we've seen flashes from like Tim Patrick,
Yeah,
you
might
know,
not
with
be
some of
good.
those guys, right? You know what I mean? Like, and so much is, and you know, poor Steve Smith is like, I don't want to talk about him, but like, and not to bring that back up, but I am bringing it back up. But the one thing I'll say about that though is not to get into the whole skirmish, whatever. But the fact of the matter is like, Steve Smith is, you know, as good a wide receiver as has been like in NFL history. Like Steve Smith knows his blank about why, you know, catching in the NFL. And when Steve Smith is like, yeah, that's just a guy. You know what I mean? And like, forget whatever the reaction, the back and forth.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, he wasn't wrong.
he's not wrong.
That's,
I mean, that's
like,
the
at
thing.
the
It's
center
just
of
like,
it.
I mean, the production hasn't been there, and you can say, hey, there's something there. But what's crazy to me, Jay, is I hear you, 24 years old, pedigree. He was productive at Alabama. He was great in college. All those things. I understand all that. But to me, it's like then you sign him to. But to still give him $40 million guaranteed or whatever it is, it's all based on upside. It's not based on anything you've ever seen.
Sure, and it's not like Odell Beckham in New York had a great offensive ecosystem and he was still able to produce. Like great players transcend their ecosystem. Wherever Marvin Harrison Jr. goes, he's probably just going to produce.
I mean, like one of my favorite players in the NFL. He's right back there, number 17, Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
Why don't you read up the list of quarterbacks Terry McLaurin has had since he's coming to the pros? Like, you know, I mean, like Kyle Allen and Garrett Gilbert and Taylor Heineke for 2 years.
Right.
And Terry McLaurin, a 3rd-round pick, has produced with whoever, you know, and, you know, Dwayne Haskins, RIP, and, you know, Alex Smith on one leg. Like, he's had, you know, Terry McLaurin for the majority of his career has not had great quarterback play either. And he's been able to
They
produce.
usually overcome it. Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson, same
Played
thing.
with Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Zach Wilson, and he puts up 1,000 yards. Like that's the scary thing. And Jeudy, from a skill set profile, is supposed to be similar to Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin. Like not this big jump ball player, but more of a crafty player.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like he gets open.
That was supposed to be his calling
That's
card.
my point. Is that's the argument? Is that like I mean like, what like. Not like Chris Olave's been playing with, you know, prime Drew Brees down in New Orleans either. I mean, like, again, like you sort of, you know, I don't know. Earning targets is a skill, and, you know, and scoring touchdowns is a skill. And to date, Jerry Jeudy has not shown either of those skills.
Certainly reasons to be skeptical.
All right. The Browns also added some depth to their backfield. Diontae Foreman signs a deal per Jordan Schultz, so that'll be something to keep an eye on as Nick Chubb works his way back from injury.
What do you think's going to happen with Nick Chubb? Where's Nick Chubb going to be drafted? Is he just
I think it
man,
depends
talk
on if we
about
see him in
wild card.
August. I mean, but like, again, great offensive line, like, you know, an offense that in theory should be more efficient, more in scoring position. Like, you know, a healthy Nick Chubb is in the conversation for 18 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, like.
Rushing title contender.
Oh, for sure, because he's you know, he's as good a running back as there, from a pure running standpoint, he's as good a running back as there is in the NFL. It's like, so it's just, is he healthy? But Diontae Foreman becomes sort of really interesting because Jerome Ford, you know, they used him as the lead back last year, but they didn't really want to. It was him and Kareem Hunt, and they sort of had this, you know, Pierre Strong was in the mix there, right? And like they had kind of this three-headed committee. But Foreman as a power back is certainly more similar to Chubb than Ford is. Ford's going to be the third down back, but Foreman's nice depth, you know, lowest cost signing in case Chubb can't make it back to start the year.
Yep.
The next one here, guys, kind of an under-the-radar deal is the Bills signed Curtis Samuel to a 3-year deal. I think the key thing here is, Matthew, with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator in Buffalo, that's when Curtis Samuel was at his best with the Panthers, a career-high 851 receiving yards. So clearly Joe Brady is in this guy's corner and bringing him to the Bills.
You know, this is a really underrated signing and really good. I mean, Curtis Samuel is going to be a sleeper next year, and rightfully so. The anti-Curtis Samuel argument is They got Dalton Kincaid. They got Khalil Shakir. All of a sudden, like it's slot receiver central because of Kincaid and Shakir, where they're going to line up as well.
Diggs bounces in and out.
Diggs bounces in and out, and we expect the Bills to draft a wide receiver as well. They need somebody on the outside. But having said that, Samuel is so versatile. Still has that burst. Again, Washington was such a mess offensively last year and has been for a while under Ron Rivera. But the fact is he can play. And it's worth noting that the last year, the Bills, top 4 in the NFL in terms of slot targets. So that is something that they like to do in terms of where Josh Allen likes to throw, in terms of what they like to target. And so Curtis Samuel becomes kind of interesting here. It's a versatile player in a much better offense than he's ever played in.
Yep. I think the sneaky thing with Curtis Samuel as well is the Bills, if you're worried about them being the heavy run offense that they were at the end of last season, well, one, their defense, I think, unambiguously has gotten worse just because they've lost. They lost both Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And then also, their schedule is ridiculous. Like their schedule next season, so they play the AFC South and the NFC West, which is fine. Those are probably mid-tier divisions. Then they play their own division and having to play 4 games against the Jets and the Dolphins. But the thing is, their 3 extra games are against the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Lions. But that is brutal. Those have to be the 3 hardest extra games that any team gets. So I think they're going to have to be throwing a ton.
And so you said NFC West as well. So
NFC West, there's no
Niners,
pushovers there. The Niners,
the Rams. The Rams offense.
Every
be
team
good.
is capable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the AFC South, which historically has been a bit of a dumpster fire, like
getting
Jags, Texans, Colts. The Texans and Colts games are on the road. Even like the Titans. The Titans might be somewhat plucky. Like the Titans aren't going to be like a 3-win team or anything.
No.
So like basically every game is difficult outside of maybe the Patriots games. But they're going to be throwing a lot.
And of course, when there's Bills wide receiver news, there's always a little Stephon Diggs. I don't want to call it drama, but always a tweet, as we should say. Ready for whatever, Stephon Diggs said, as you see right here.
Yeah, that's Stephon Diggs, friend of the podcast, the chief ball officer.
That's what they call him.
Of course, Stephon Diggs. So, by the way, just for the kids watching, whatever has an H usually.
Yes.
So it's misspelled there, but yeah.
The British spelling.
Is that?
That's what producer Pete's telling me.
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a thing.
They spell it in Newcastle.
No. Yeah, so it's ready for whatever.
Yes.
Whatever.
The problem is he was so bad at the end of last season, he's got no trade value in his contract.
And it's
can't
a
really
bad
move that deal.
contract. I don't
Can't
know if
move
they can't move that.
No.
They didn't need to sign that extension.
You just need him to get back to who he was.
I mean, I will tell you that when
That's all you can do.
I so many sort of nuggets from from the combine. I think this made this into the column, but I remember talking to a Bills source who basically told me, that the Bills actually still believe in Stephon Diggs. That they believe that last year down the stretch, the lack of production was partially because there were a couple of big plays that just missed between him and Allen. Like if those hit, it looks a lot different and just sort of game script, and there was just a weird game here or there. But they still believe that Diggs can be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And also just to the point is it's like their contract. The Diggs' contract is unmovable. Like, if they move him after June 1st, it's maybe it's a livable cap hit, but just honestly, the expectation is their Stephon Diggs is a Buffalo Bill this season.
Yep. I think there's something weird going on there.
It's definitely something weird.
To me, the smoking gun was that Philadelphia game that they lost, the epic game in the rain where Jake Elliott hits like the 63-yarder. Like that was a game. The Bills 5-5, I think, going into that game. That was kind of for their season. Now they ended up going on a run after. That was a massive game. Diggs wasn't out there on third downs. Like he was constantly off the field on third downs, despite playing on first and second. It's like, what's going on? Like there had to be, some weird stuff there. I mean, he's still a good receiver. He still produced enough down the end of the season. But, I mean, he was a guy who's being talked about in the same vein and breath as, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Like, that he seems well departed from
No, I mean, listen, in one of my dynasty leagues, I was making a stretch run. I was the number 1 overall team. And I traded a first-round pick this year for Diggs, week 7 or 8 last year. I finished third. I did not win the league. It's disappointing. I had some injuries down the stretch too, but still, which is one of the reasons why I traded for Diggs. But I massively regret that trade now. I would very much like to have a first-round pick right now instead of Stephon Diggs sitting on my, built-to-win dynasty team. But what are you going to do?
Some quarterback movement this last week as well, starting with the Steelers trading for Justin Fields from the Bears for a conditional 2025 sixth-round pick. The pick becomes a fourth if Fields plays 51% or more of the Steelers' offensive snaps this season.
Can you imagine having this conversation 2 years ago saying, by the way, you'll be able to get Justin Fields and Russell Wilson for a conditional sixth and $1.25 million.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's
how fast your
your
value can fall off.
It's crazy.
Yep. I think people are kind of confused by what they're doing. I think this is fantastic. Like, you've gotten 2 swings at a quarterback.
For sure.
Now, I don't really see there's any downside whatsoever. If there's like a turmoil in the locker room, just get rid of one of them. Like, it doesn't matter.
They did that with Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
Literally.
There's no opportunity cost whatsoever. And maybe Russ is good enough that he can steer this team to a 12-5 division with an improving offensive
They made the playoffs with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph last year. Yeah. Whatever you think of Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields,
and a Trubisky cameo.
Yeah. I mean,
Trubisky, by the way, was a 0 out of 10 last year. He was atrocious.
Yes, those guys, Fields and Wilson, are absolutely a massive upgrade over what they had at the quarterback position last year.
Now, I think the counter argument would be, when I talk to people who are just fans of the league about why they don't like it, they're like, I would just rather have Justin Fields and just not have Russell Wilson there. But I think the fact that the team, like, it is a veteran team, it's a veteran defense. I think that for guys like Highsmith and Cam Hayward and TJ Watt, like, I think they would like to have a veteran quarterback there like Russell Wilson, because maybe he is just good enough to get them where they need to go. And then you have the upside of Fields if anything goes wrong. Like, if Wilson's just bad for a month, all right, well, who cares? Get rid of him.
I think it's a great move, because I think, to your point, like, Wilson is at this point, Wilson's like a league average quarterback.
Yeah,
maybe slightly
7 out of 10.
Yeah, maybe slightly below average. Like, we've joked, he's like the 18th best quarterback in the NFL.
He was 18th in EPA per play. He was 18th in PFF grade. He looks like the 18th best quarterback, so he probably is just the 18th best quarterback.
That's fine, right? Like, the 32 teams, so he's middle of the pack. Like, he's more or less a league average quarterback at this point. And if you have a league average offense, right, and an elite defense, like, you can an elite coaching, which is what we all think Mike Tomlin is, like, and that staff, like, they can get there. Like, we'll talk about Arthur Smith in a second here, but my point is like, I think it's brilliant by the Steelers, because first off, it cost them nothing. Again, $1.25 million and a conditional 6. If it turns into a fourth, whatever, great, fine. But basically, if Russell Wilson is good enough to get them there, then good. And then meanwhile, you develop Justin Fields into what potentially could be a franchise quarterback. He was drafted to be that. He was that at Ohio State. So, and then, by the way, if it just goes to hell with Russell Wilson, then okay, fine. Then you throw Justin Fields in there. You see what you got out of Justin Fields, and then you can address it next year. And and try to draft somebody or look for an improvement there. But 2 things I'll say. It's interesting. It becomes a condition. It becomes a fourth if he plays over 51% of the snaps. So you could see a scenario where, I don't know where the Steelers' bye week is, but like week 9, week 10, if the Steelers are out of it, then okay, now we're going to play Fields the rest of the way, see what we have, make sure he plays under 51% of the snaps,
right.
So we
pick.
don't have to give up the 4. But and then you sort of see what you got there. So I actually think it's a really smart move. Here's the other thing I will say. Think about Arthur Smith. And for as much as we like to joke or clown about Arthur Smith, obviously running is a big part of what he does. I suspect that even if Russell Wilson is, quote-unquote, the starter in Pittsburgh, there will be a package of plays every single week for Justin Fields that uses his legs, that's more, RPO stuff that allows him. We even saw that, like, even when Heineke became, quote, the starter, you saw a little bit of Ritter get mixed in there in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense for Fields. So you have a guy that can give you the rushing element. Listen, the Steelers also, there wasn't a lot of buttons they could press, guys. They don't have a top 15 pick.
Correct.
They weren't going to be able to land Kirk Cousins. So, like you said, Jay, they took 2 swings, and like you said, Matthew, they're 0 cost. I mean, a 6th rounder and $1 million. And they're going to see the upside play is Fields. They're going to go into the season with the floor play in Russ. And if they hate what they see from Russ all summer, which this probably won't happen, they can cut him. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Just with quarterback it's so much more important than every other position. Like, the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they move the line 7 points. Micah Parsons, whoever the best non-quarterback is, will move it like maybe 2 points.
Yeah, the
like,
Teron
that is the
Armstead
game.
argument we
Yeah,
always have.
yeah, that's the other thing. But so I think teams are just never in position where you can have multiple swings at a quarterback on the same roster, just because like it just doesn't work with the cap and like culturally. But the Steelers are in a position where they're able to, and they've just kind of backed into this freak position where Wilson, because of his contract, was available for nothing, and then Fields is available for nothing just because of his weird contract too, where no one wanted to trade for him because of the 50-year option and all this kind of stuff. So I think they've done incredibly well.
I do too, and you're still shocked about a guy that was literally like, what was Fields, pick 12?
Yeah, top 15
for
pick.
a guy that was a top 15 pick and, an absolute superstar at Ohio State gets dealt for a 2025 sixth that could conditional sixth that could at best turn into a 4.
Yep.
Like, a quarterback that's still how old's Justin Fields, 25?
I doubt
24?
it. It's probably 23 years old still.
I mean,
Who was going as like, QB 6 in
24
fantasy
sounds
drafts
right.
last year as well.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, fantasy-wise, we're all hoping for Fields. Like, you'd much rather start, if you're playing fantasy, you'd much rather have Justin Fields as a starting quarterback than Russell Wilson. Like, if you knew Justin Fields was the starter the entire year for the Steelers, he would get drafted much higher than if you knew Russell Wilson was the starter the entire year for Pittsburgh.
But on the flip side, you probably like George Pickens and whatever receiver they're about to draft better with Russ, right?
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
So-
I mean, Pickens is going to have a big year.
No matter who's out there.
No matter who's out there.
Yep.
Just
I think
massive
him and
target
Russ
share.
are a nice fit, though.
Would you back over under Russell Wilson 9.5 games started for the Steelers?
I think I would still take the over.
Yeah,
I
I think so
don't
too.
think they
Feels
need
like
an
he's gonna be the
upside
guy.
play at quarterback.
Yeah.
You're talking about a situation where they were dreadful at quarterback last year. If they get to mediocre, that's a massive upgrade.
Yep.
With Fields, the spectrum, the variance is
Right.
He can go win you a game against anyone. He can lose you a game against
Especially
anyone.
because, by the way, also just think about Russell Wilson for a second here. He goes into Denver, $250 million contract, this kind of ugly breakup with Seattle.
Office? Can't forget the office he had.
Yeah, he's got the office, the whole thing. Let's ride. There's so much public pressure on him, right? And then Nathaniel Hackett and whatever, that's a disaster. And then Sean Payton comes in, and there's reports of friction there. And so, again, he's got this massive spotlight on him in Denver because of the contract, because of the expectations, because of what he left in Seattle, because of it was such a dumpster fire the year before with Hackett, everything like that. Now, he's been humbled somewhat. Now he's going to Pittsburgh, which, by the way, is not a big media town. Think about how little stories there were out of Pittsburgh about Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell or some of the.
We had no idea.
We had no idea. That's what I'm saying so when it comes to he's not going to New York or something like that. He's going to Pittsburgh. And to your point, he doesn't need to be Russell Wilson in capital letters, former, Super Bowl winning quarterback Russell Wilson. Now he's going there, on this. I think expectations are lower. And again, he doesn't have to put it all on his shoulders. They've got a really good defense. And, Arthur Smith is going to be like, hey, man, just hand it off. Take a couple of shots to Pickens deep when you need to. But, we're gonna run a conservative offense. And so I think Russ will be protected and not have to ask to do that much. And as we talked about, he's fine.
Yep.
He's not going to win you a game, but he's not going to lose you a game. And literally the quarterbacks they had last year would lose them games. Or they had to win in spite of their quarterback play, not because of it. Or, so right. Mediocre would be great for the Steelers.
Yep.
It takes a lot for me to defend Russell Wilson, but I think Sean Payton made up his mind about him before he ever stepped foot in the Broncos facility.
I would agree.
And I think that's extremely unfair in this situation. So we'll see what he could do in Pittsburgh. More quarterback movement, young quarterback movement. Sam Howell traded to the Seahawks to be the backup.
Is he going to have the Seahawks on his Hall of Fame plaque?
Yeah, this is the question. When future Hall of Famer Sam Howell eventually gets into the Hall of Fame, does he go in as the Commanders or the Seahawks?
Yeah, or the Raiders when he's on that team next year.
That's a good call out.
I'm bummed and happy. I'm bummed because I really like the kid, right? I root for the kid. By the way, very productive, top 10 fantasy quarterback for much of the year last year in an impossible situation. He was destined to fail. The offense was a mess, the offensive line was a mess. Howell just took so many hits, and a lot of those are on him. I get it, but still, Howell's not a zero. There's still potentially a very good quarterback in Sam Howell. I think it's a great move for Seattle. I actually wouldn't have mind. I get it. They sort of want to give a clean slate. I'd much rather Sam Howell as a backup than Marcus Mariota.
Close.
I don't know what they're doing there.
The $6 million man.
I mean, don't get me started. But what I would say is that Howell, I'm surprised Commanders were only able to get a 3rd and a 5th for him, and they had to give up like a 4 and a 6.
Swap.
They had to they moved up in 2 rounds and then sent Sam Howell. But I'm happy for the player because I think there's no way he was starting in Washington unless there was a massive injury, whether it's Drake May or Jaden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy or whoever they drafted quarterback at 2. They're drafting a quarterback, and that person's going to start for Kingsbury and the Commanders. So he was never going to start. So now he's got a chance because John Schneider says Howell was not acquired to compete with Geno Smith, but I don't know. I feel like it feels like reading some of the stuff around it that, they sort of left the door open a little bit. I don't know what you guys think, but I think there's a scenario in which Sam Howell starts for maybe it's a 10% chance, but I don't think it's a non-zero chance.
Feels like the Seahawks aren't just that enamored of Geno Smith, right?
I mean, the contract extension they gave him tells you that.
Yeah, which is kind of a little weird because he's played at a really high level the past 2 seasons, but I guess because he is older and I don't think there's any real upside left in Geno Smith. He is what he is. But the past 2 years, he's been better than Russell Wilson the past 2 years.
Sure.
He's a fine quarterback. I think if you have a better supporting cast around him, he can win. But I guess it's just another upside option behind him.
He's a B. You know what I mean? And there's Howell's story is yet to be written. I mean, he was a guy that was at one point in his life considered a first round pick. He ends up dropping in the draft, but Howell's had some head scratching moments, but Howell's also had some really magical moments. There have been plays on the field this past year with the Commanders. There have been plays and throws where you're like, okay, that kid can play the quarterback position. He's not just a guy. I mean, Connor, you tell me if you disagree with any of that.
No.
But
Would you agree with magical being a strong word to describe Sam Howell's season in Washington?
I'm saying there are moments.
Sure.
I'm saying there were absolutely there were head-scratching moments. There were like, what are you doing moments as
He's
well.
one of the toughest kids I've ever seen.
Without a
He
doubt.
absolutely wears those hits.
No, 100%. But I'm just saying there were definitely moments where you're like, okay, if we can get more of that, if we can get more consistency out of that, there's
You look at the
there.
Eagles game last year. There's that performance, his ability to hang against a tough defense and make big throws and challenge down the field. Can you dial in more consistency?
Yeah, and can you get that internal clock?
Because
he takes too many hits and he takes too many sacks, and some of those aren't him. But I don't know. There's enough of a project there. Like, other than pedigree, what's the difference between him and Justin Fields? In terms of a wide range of outcomes, but I'm dead serious.
The trade return tells you what the league thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam Howell brought back a better return than Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Right
Fields
now.
is faster. That's it. Pretty much.
Fields is faster, but I mean, it's not. Howell's obviously very mobile.
Yep.
I'm just saying, one was a top
I don't
15
think
pick,
they're
and one
that
was a
different.
whatever fifth rounder or whatever.
Look at what Mac
Howell
Jones went for.
Yeah.
I mean, the league is telling you what they think of Sam Howell compared to other guys that were taken in the first round. Kenny Pickett. First round. All these guys were first-round picks, and they were literally given away. Zach Wilson might be cut.
Yeah. Hey, it's hard to keep your job in the NFL for a full season, no matter what the situation. And he basically did it till he got hurt at the end. I mean, Mac Jones couldn't do it in New England, despite everything that was going on there.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
That's right.
Imagine Matthew Berry as quarterback in the NFL.
Running back.
Yeah.
We were on
it would
last
be for
week.
the Panthers, I think.
Yes.
Long snapper is
Yeah.
really what it
There we
was.
go.
Long snapper. All right. Anyway, we're off the rails.
Some running back news. The Cowboys bring back Rico Dowdle on a one-year deal. Here's the running backs on Dallas's roster right now, Matthew. Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, Malik Davis, Snoop Conner. That's it.
It's not great.
Feels like they're not done.
Pick 54 is almost guaranteed to be
a
their
running back.
starting running back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they've been tied to Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. There's some rumors there. It feels like a Zeke reunion is almost inevitable as well. Like he was on a one-year deal in New England last year. It doesn't feel like he's coming back to New England. They got Ramondre and they signed Antonio Gibson as well. Doesn't feel like he's coming back to New England. So could sort of see Zeke, especially with Pollard now in Tennessee. You could see Zeke come on back.
I mean, fantasy-wise, it's pretty an appetizing situation given that the Cowboys were a top 3 offense. Obviously, they play in the Dome. Dak gives you such a high floor in that offense that there's going to be a lot of touchdown opportunities. So There's a chance that the offensive rookie of the year is just the guy who gets drafted by Dallas.
Right? Yes, 1,000%.
Right.
Or the number one rookie running back that gets drafted in fantasy is whoever the Cowboys take.
Yep.
Just regardless of sort of talent. You know, when you think about other teams that might take a running back, the only other one might be the Chargers that sort of jump out at you that feels obvious, and you know they've got Gus Edwards there.
Which you feel better about.
Yeah, you feel better about whoever's going to be. Again, it sort of depends on where they get drafted in the pedigree, but you feel better about the Dallas guy.
Yep.
You'd rather compete against Rico Dowdle than Gus Edwards.
Yep.
One more interesting scenario is the Raiders' backfield. We like what we saw from Zamir White in 4 starts last season, over 15 fantasy points per game. They bring in Alexander Mattison for some depth here as well.
And this was a great move for Zamir White's fantasy value. Like, you know, it obviously shot up once Josh Jacobs went to the Packers. And then you're like, all right, well, they're not done. They're not going into the season with Zamir White and Amir Abdullah as the only guys in the running back room. So depending on, like, sort of who they drafted or who they potentially could have signed or traded for, you're sort of like, getting Alexander Mattison, who was not good last year.
No.
Like, this is a good sign for Zamir White because he's not somebody that's going to challenge Zamir White for this starting role. He is exactly what you said. He is depth. Zamir White averaged almost 115 yards from scrimmage last year in all of his starts. Like, Zamir White was good down the stretch on a Raiders team that, you know, didn't have a lot else working for it offensively. You know, you sort of knew they were going to run. That, you know, friend of the podcast, Aiden O'Connell, wasn't scaring a lot of defenses there. So I think this is actually a very good signing for Zamir White. I mean, you know, the fact that the Minnesota Vikings, and they're losing Kirk Cousins, but they were still like, and I know this happened out of sequence, but like all they have is Ty Chandler. And they were still like, yeah, we're good. Yeah. It's not like Alexander Mattison was expensive. But they cut him.
They're ready to move on.
They were ready to move on.
Wipe the slate clean.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. He didn't have a good year.
If you filled out your bracket but want to get some more action during the NCAA tournament, you can catch Bet the Edge on youtube.com/NBC Sports or wherever you find your podcast. It stars Jay Croucher, Drew Dinsick, and Matthew Berry.
Well, I don't know that it stars me. Just to be clear here, it doesn't star me, but if you want to see me stumble my way through. By the way, they're also not going to be talking about the NFL awards live, which is what the graphics said there. I think
we had a fair share of that.
Yeah, we had a fair share of that. Just heads up, though, if it does come up on the show, Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year.
Yes.
Just so you know.
Yes.
DeMar Hamlin, not comeback.
But anyway,
but
if you are making bets for, don't listen to any of mine, but Jay and Drew.
Or Dre, as we all know together.
You guys are, you're sort of like.
Maybe from now on. Drew and Jay.
Like a boy band.
Dre?
Kind of duo thing going.
Like, or Benifer. It's sort of like that. It's what you guys are. It's okay.
Yeah, similar levels of
anyway,
fun.
Barbenheimer?
Yeah. Barbenheimer. Yeah, Benifer. And now it's Dre.
Okay.
Anyway, so check out Dre on Bet the Edge, and you can see me talk about
whatever geopolitical
situations, relationships with my wife, lots of stuff going on.
I like relationships with your wife. There's just multiple things happening. Lots
going on.
Yes.
It was a fun appearance. I'll just say this.
All right.
It was a fun appearance.
We'll keep the fun going with some free agency love-hate, and we'll start with the love to keep the good vibes going. Matthew,
and just to clarify
why don't you explain what actually love-hate is for the new people on board?
Well, the free agency love-hate is different than normal in-season love-hate. Loves are players that I feel like their situation improved because of things that happened during the free agent period. And even if it's a trade, but so whether it's a trade, a release, or whatever, but like anytime a player moves in the NFL, it affects their fantasy value. It affects their personal fantasy value, it affects the players that they've left their team, and it affects the players on the team that they're going to. So the loves here are players whose fantasy value improved because of one specific move or multiple moves that happened during the free agency period. And hates, of course, are players whose value dropped based on moves. Doesn't necessarily mean that they moved, but for example, I'll just give you one hint. Like Sam Darnold is quote unquote a love because he's now a starting quarterback in the NFL, or at least has a shot at playing. So his fantasy value has improved. It doesn't mean I like Sam Darnold more than some of the quarterbacks that are on the hate list that you'll see. Like I still don't want Sam Darnold in fantasy, but clearly whatever Sam Darnold's fantasy value is, it's higher than he was as the backup in San Francisco because now he's got an actual path to playing time in a fantasy-friendly offense of Minnesota.
Well, let's start with the quarterbacks then. And Matthew Stafford makes the love list as the Rams. They re-signed Marquise Robinson. They bring back their guard, Kevin Dotson. They spent a lot more money on another guard in Jonah Jackson. And Colby Parkinson joins the fray at tight end.
Yeah, I mean, like this was quietly a very good offense last year. Stafford played at an MVP level for much of the year, and so now you've improved his offensive line. You bring back Robinson. He's already got Kupp and obviously Puka Nacua there as well. They upgrade. Kyron Williams is back as well, and you upgrade the tight end room as well. So over his final 7 games last year, this is a guy who was the 9th best quarterback in fantasy, right? Top 3 in terms of both touchdowns and passing yards per game over that stretch. And so I think a fully healthy Stafford behind a better offensive line. And by the way, while he was doing that, while he was this top 9 quarterback on a points per game basis over the final 7 games, that was also when Demarcus Robinson sort of emerged. So again, Demarcus Robinson, not the biggest name, but I think an important piece for that Rams Sean McVay offense.
I think the other thing too is that Kupp missed the first month of the season and then was banged up throughout the year. Kyron Williams wasn't, like, Cam Akers was the starting running back on that team, got like 22 carries in week 1. Kyron Williams also missed time. I think he went on IR, missed 4 weeks during it. So you would just project normally more health for the skill position players, and Stafford will have more continuity with all of them.
The infamous Cam Akers 22 carries, 29 yards game.
Yes.
A fantasy legend. Another quarterback that makes the love list here. How about Will Levis? The Titans have been busy. They signed Calvin Ridley. They get a new center in Lloyd Cushenberry. They add Sadiq Charles at guard. They bring back Nick Westbrook-Akina. They have the 7th overall pick in the draft, which is almost certain to be a left tackle. And Brian Callahan brings his dad, Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, over with him as that hire.
For sure. I mean, it's not the level of what Chicago's doing with Caleb Williams, but the Titans, give them credit. They're doing everything they can to give Will Levis a shot at success. Look, I'm a big Will Levis fan. He's a Connecticut kid. He grew up here. He played high school ball, literally like against one of my school's rivals as well. Like, just a great guy. I've interviewed him a couple of different times during his rookie year. Awesome, awesome kid. So I root for Will Levis on a personal level. But I do think that adding Calvin Ridley to DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks, Chig Okonkwo, all of a sudden now you have some weapons. It was the worst offensive line in football last year. It really was. So to your point about adding Cushenberry, they're most likely, whether it's Joe Alt
Feels
or
like
somebody,
Joe Alt's already a Titan.
Right. I mean, you might as well be picking out houses in Nashville right now. I mean,
He's
like
plus 100 to go to the Titans, which seems generous. Yeah, I feel like I'd take that over the field.
I would like that.
I'll say this, why? Because he is so good that the door is open for somebody to trade in front of them to take him.
Wow.
He is viewed as a top 5 player in the draft.
Like Penei Sewell type, like that kind of level.
That's
like
exact
he's like that
level
kind of anchor,
I would put him next
that
to.
level. Trent
That's
Williams,
why it's
like
not
he could be
minus money.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Well, whether it's Alt or somebody like him, like because they're going to
good tackle class.
It's a very good tackle class, and they're going to draft one of those in the first round. So they're improving their offensive line, adding Pollard to Tajay Spears. So now suddenly that backfield is also has some nice pass catchers as well. So Will Levis's fantasy stock has improved by the weapons they're adding around him, both on the line and in the receiving room.
Yep. Interesting dynamic having your father as the offensive line coach. What happens if they start giving up a lot of sacks? Does Callahan bring the old man into the room?
Well, you know what? And listen, I went to Brian
Callahan. Can you fire your dad?
Yeah. I went to Brian Callahan's press conference at the Combine, and he was obviously asked about that. And he was, he just said, like, it's awesome. It's, it's basically all the stuff that I've done growing up, talking football at the kitchen table with my dad. Now we get to do, for the Titans, and he was very complimentary of the Cleveland Browns,
but I'm the boss.
The Browns had Bill Callahan under contract and didn't have to let him out, but the Browns, recognizing what a special situation it was for a father-son to coach together in the NFL, they basically said go with God and figured that out. And so I think the other thing that was so funny is that they asked Brian Callahan about, like, oh, you're gonna be able to discipline your dad, and he's just like, yeah, I don't think you don't tell my dad anything. Like, I think it doesn't matter. Like, I think Brian Callahan's gonna be like, he's still dad. Like, just let me know we got the protections okay. Like, I think Bill's just gonna tell him, here's what we're doing.
Yeah,
and
Bill's the
Brian's
keys
gonna
to the car,
great,
for sure.
Exactly.
Let's move over to the running backs. Bijan Robinson tops the love list here. The Falcons get a real quarterback in Kirk Cousins. They get a vertical field stretcher in Darnell Mooney. They did lose Van Jefferson, Mac Hollins, and Jonnu Smith.
But, here's the thing about Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins did not make the love list because I think he's still like a borderline top 10, 12-ish quarterback. He's still what he is, right?
Top 12 Kirk Cousins.
Top 12 Kirk Cousins. But Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle, like everyone gets improved in a massive way by Kirk Cousins, who is, a legitimately, lower tier 1 quarterback, but still a tier 1 quarterback, getting him there. So Bijan Robinson, being coached by not Arthur Smith, that's a win. That's a free agency move. Like literally just not having Arthur Smith there, I think, is just a massive win. And Raheem Morris kind of addressed this at his combine press conference, just like, that, in essence, he said some version of, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically like, if the Falcons had done what they were supposed to do last year, he wouldn't have been here. And partially it's the quarterback play, and partially I think it's the usage of Bijan Robinson. But it'll be a much more efficient offense under Kirk Cousins. You think about the last 4 years that Kirk Cousins was in Minnesota, Vikings top 5 in the NFL in yards per game and red zone drives. They're going to be in scoring position a lot more often. Bijan Robinson's going to be used like a true workhorse running back that he's drafted to be. So this is great news for Bijan Robinson. Look, fantasy value comes from opportunity and usage. And I think, Jay, Josh Jacobs landing in Green Bay is a perfect situation for that.
Absolutely, just because there's no one else really there for him. And he's shown that he can handle a workhorse type of load. And the fact that the Packers offense is so good, he's got a situation with a better offensive line, should be in scoring position a lot more than he was with the Raiders. I mean, he could absolutely lead the league in rushing touchdowns, rushing yards, which we forget he literally did 2 years ago on a team that had a losing record. So I think if he can stay healthy, he could be an absolute monster in Green Bay.
Packers were a top 12 team last year in yards per game and scoring offense. His only competition is A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon,
not good.
Not good. Hashtag not good. Hashtag analysis. We talked about this a little bit as well when it happened, but another guy that makes the love list because of where he landed in his touchdown equity is Derrick Henry.
And he still is very good, Derrick Henry. And he just fits what Baltimore likes to do. It's a very varied run scheme. They like pullers. They like balancing gap and zone runs. And Henry's a guy that can really, really do it all. You get him working off tackle. He's a nightmare for DBs to come up and deal with. And I mean, Baltimore has a lot of work left to do on this offensive line. They've lost both starting guards. They traded Morgan Moses at tackle. But it just feels like a franchise, Jay, that you believe in figuring it out in the trenches for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I mean, they are the one team, probably of every team in the league, that most deserves the benefit of the doubt and just the trust that they're going to put guys in the right position to succeed. And I think the value of Lamar Jackson, and this is a reason why he won MVP, is that, this idea that he shows up in ways that don't show up in the box score. And the biggest way with that is just how much he helps the running game. Because there has to be someone assigned to cover Lamar Jackson, and that just means there's just one less person in the box. And Derrick Henry has spent his entire career running into loaded boxes, and he's not going to have to deal with that nearly as much in Baltimore. I think the only issue with Derrick Henry is that I think Keaton Mitchell is really, really good, and I think that he is going to have to get at least some run, even if it's only 5-6 carries or whatever. But I don't think it matters a great deal for Henry, given that he's still going to get the massive share of the workload, and he's going to be the goal line back.
Correct. And by the way, Keaton Mitchell coming off a pretty serious injury too as well. Gus Edwards is gone. We don't expect J.K. Dobbins to come back to this team either. So, I mean, it's just like there's actually not a lot. Not that Henry was ever going to have any competition, but he'll have less competition than he had last year with Tajay Spears, I would argue, because what him and Keaton Mitchell do are very different. Last year, the Baltimore Ravens, their running backs, all the running backs for the Ravens combined, for 1,696 rushing yards, almost 1,700 rushing yards, and 20 rushing touchdowns. Again, that doesn't count Lamar Jackson. That is just the Baltimore running backs last year. And that's a list that's like Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, Dalvin Cook. There was a Melvin Gordon sighting, Justice Hill, like none of them are as good. And even though we really like Keaton Mitchell here, like none of them were as good as Derrick Henry was last year.
He could easily be 1,300 yards, 16 touchdowns, very conceivable.
Easy, if not more, 1,000%.
Jay, how about Joe Mixon making the love list here, going to a really good passing offense with C.J. Stroud. Devin Singletary's out. We don't know what Dameon Pierce is going to be this year. This feels like really good touchdown equity for Joe Mixon. Yep,
and they gave him guaranteed money. They extended him immediately, so they clearly believe that he is the guy. I think the thing with Houston as well is their offensive line is just banged up all of last season. Like, you would just project a bit of health regression on that front. Here's the other thing, too, is that it's weird to think of this because he was so good. C.J. Stroud should get better. Like, he should get better. This is his second year in the league. He was already like the 6th best quarterback in football last year. He has scope to be, like, he could emerge right in that tier of Allen and Burrow. I'm not going to put anyone ever in the tier of Mahomes until, they do it in the playoffs, but he's going to continue to be a monster. The offense was just injured all year. Like, Tank Dell will come back. They're going to have more of a spaced field in a way. So I think Mixon is just going to get a ton of touchdowns and a ton of work.
On a team that had like a so-so offensive line, and it was bad at the beginning, and then they finally got healthier as the season went on, but still, this was a team that was top 12 in running back carries last year. And so, to your point, defensive, all the defensive coordinators that have Houston on their team this year, they're going to sit there and be like, hey, we've got to figure out how to stop C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And so I think that Mixon, you could argue why is he on the love list, because he's a volume-based RB2 that he was in Cincinnati, and now he goes to Houston where he's going to be a volume-based RB2. But I do think that that's an emerging offense, and I would argue that it's actually a better situation for Mixon this year because Chase Brown towards the end started to eat into Mixon a little bit more. Like, Chase Brown's coming, and so here I'm less worried about Dameon Pierce than I am about Chase Brown. And to your point about sort of paying and it's a better division. I'd rather be in the AFC South than the AFC North if you're Joe Mixon. And so he's going to get a massive volume on a really good offense. So this he went from he's released to all of a sudden now landing as the lead back, one of the few situations where he could get a ton of work on a great offense. Makes the love.
I do think the last thing as well, I've never entirely understood all of the Bobby Slowick love. I get that he did a good job and everything, but like he was extremely conservative in terms of just running the ball as opposed to passing. I thought he almost cost them their season the way he ran the ball against Indianapolis in that final game, where it's just like, why aren't you just putting the ball in C.J. Stroud's hands? But all of that stuff, any doubts about Slowick, any conservative, that just plays to Joe Mixon's benefit because they're probably just going to run the ball a little bit more than perhaps they should.
One more running back here, Matthew. Gus Edwards. You talked about this as soon as he signed to the Chargers. We know how much Harbaugh loves the downhill run game, and Gus there on a 2-year, $9 million deal.
He was, in his 4 years as the head coach of the 49ers, Jim Harbaugh, the Niners ranked second in rush rate. Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, who's coming from Baltimore, where Gus Edwards was his guy, Greg Roman's offenses have ranked top 3 in rush attempts in 7 of his 10 years as an offensive coordinator as well. And so the 2 full seasons that Gus Edwards played under Roman in Baltimore, 2019-2020, Edwards had over 700 rushing yards and a lot of touchdowns. And so I think this is an underrating signing. He's not involved in the passing game. No one's going to be excited when you draft Gus Edwards. He's not a sexy player. He's not a sexy name. But the Chargers are going to be so insanely run heavy, and I think they're going to be good. And so I think Gus Edwards is going to be a dirt cheap double-digit touchdown player for you that you can get like in the 8th round of fantasy drafts. So absolutely, Gus Edwards goes from Baltimore, where he's going to be part of a committee, to, like, at the moment, he's the lead running back for one of the run heaviest teams in the NFL. That's what the Chargers are going to be this year.
4th place schedule as well for the Chargers, which makes a difference. They're going to be up in games just because they have that easier schedule.
It's going to be either Baltimore or the Chargers that are the run heaviest team in the NFL this coming year.
We move over to the pass catchers, and no surprise, the Falcons with Drake London and Kyle Pitts both making the love list. Clearly, Matthew, because of the additions of having a quarterback in Kirk Cousins. A big jump for these guys.
Massive jump as well. Look, Cousins had a wide receiver finish top 10 in 5 of his 6 seasons with Minnesota as well. We saw him support number 1 fantasy wide receiver production when he was in Washington as well. And so Drake London, who is good, they never had anyone that could get him the ball. They didn't have a play caller that was scheming stuff for him. But so Drake London, massive upgrade both in terms of his quarterback and the play calling. So Drake London makes the love list along with Kyle Pitts, who keeps number 8. Hopefully he still gets the targets that he was trying to negotiate for with Kirk Cousins. But look, he's had 23 career games, Kyle Pitts has. 23 career games with 6 or more targets. And he's averaging over 60 receiving yards in those 23 games. Last year, there were only 3 tight ends who averaged over 60 receiving yards per game. Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, and George Kittle. Since becoming a starter, Cousins, for his career, top 5 in the NFL in terms of targets and completions to tight ends. Whether it's Hawkinson, whether it was Jordan Reed back in the day in Washington, he has always liked to throw over the middle to the tight end. I think this is a massive win for both Kyle Pitts and Drake London. I've been out on them since they've been in Atlanta. I'm in on both of them this year.
Yep. Matthew, if you could give me the power to look into the future and see the box score of one team in the NFL, their week 1 box score before fantasy drafts, like who would be the most valuable team to see that for? I think it would be Atlanta, because one, get to see like how many targets does Kyle Pitts actually get?
Sure,
Is this going to be a thing? And then I think probably more importantly, how many carries is Bijan Robinson getting in relation to Tyler Algier? Because there is a chance, like Kyle Pitts could be a top 3 tight end next season. Drake London could be a top 6 wide receiver. That's not out of it. And Bijan Robinson could be the number 1 player in fantasy. And I think we're going to actually know a fair bit of that just after the first game, just to see what their usage is.
There's absolutely no question. I love that they play in the Dome. Yep. The NFC South doesn't scare me as a division either as well. And so Kirk Cousins coming there and getting rid of Arthur Smith, just massive win for the entire offense. The Falcons will be a lot of fun next year.
Yeah, Arthur Smith.
Sticking with the love list here, Christian Kirk and Evan Engram make it for the Jaguars as they lose Calvin Ridley in free agency to the Titans. Yes, Gabe Davis signs with Jacksonville, Matthew, but clearly you think there's now more targets put on the plate of both these guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're loved because of addition by subtraction. Whatever we think of Gabe Davis, we don't think he's as good as Calvin Ridley. And so, again, the focal point of that offense for Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson is going to be Evan Engram and Christian Kirk in the middle of the field. And so both guys improve their target share in this one. Calvin Ridley moving on vacates 136 targets, which I think some will go to Gabe Davis, but not a ton. Gabe Davis has not been a guy that has throughout his career earned massive targets. He's had these massive games because he's got these big play Gabe, like he'll catch some 70-yard bomb, or have multiple touchdowns. But the fact is he's never been a guy he is usually not like an 8 receptions for 85 yards kind of guy. I think a lot of those targets, those 136 targets, go to Christian Kirk and Evan Engram, who, by the way, had the second most receptions last year. Evan Engram did, by a tight end in NFL history.
We talked about this one, Jay, when we broke down the Justin Fields trade, Russell Wilson in with the Steelers, but it feels like good news for George Pickens, especially after the Diontae Johnson trade.
There's no one else. There's no one else to throw the ball
now.
to. It's like Calvin Austin, but I mean, they have to be the most likely team of just about everyone alongside the Chargers to draft a receiver.
Easily in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's going to be a rookie wide receiver. There's not really much competition outside of that. Just the nature of Russell Wilson's game as well. I think you can see some overlap between Cortland Sutton and George Pickens, just as the deep ball thrower that he is. Pickens' touchdown equity should go up with Russ as well, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's Arthur Smith. They're going to be run heavy still, but a 23.5% target share with Diontae Johnson, that is now up for grabs here. We've seen Pickens just have unbelievably, kind of crazy catches. Like the skill is off the charts, and now it's his 3rd year. So it's just will Arthur Smith, do to George Pickens what he did to Drake London? But in fairness to Arthur Smith, he'll have better quarterback play than he had in Washington, in Atlanta. I think as much as we want to clown on Smith for his insane Bijan Robinson usage, I think the argument for why he didn't throw as much to Pitts or London is because he just didn't have anyone that could actually get them the ball, right? Whether it was Mariota or Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke. With Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields, he's going to have an improvement at the quarterback position. And Pickens is not a guy that needs massive volume here because he's such a big play threat.
I think the other thing too with Arthur Smith is that a big part of his offense in Tennessee was play action off of the attention that Henry commanded. So I think there will be a lot of deep shots off of play action to Pickens. So that is a good fit.
Which is what Russell Wilson's really good, right? Yeah. He's last couple of years, 3 consecutive seasons now for Russell Wilson, top 3 in terms of percentage of passes thrown 20 or more air yards down the roads. I mean, Russ can still chuck it deep. Yep. And so I think they will take those shots. So Pickens absolutely makes the love list, as does Diontae Johnson. So him going to Carolina, where there's not a ton of competition for targets. Yes, Adam Thielen is still there, but we're still waiting for Jonathan Mingo and Terrence Marshall to kind of do something here. Diontae Johnson should have just a massive target share, right? Think about Adam Thielen last year. Almost a 26% target share in 2023. From weeks 1 through 11, he was a top 10 fantasy quarterback, a top 10 fantasy wide receiver on a points per game basis. Adam Thielen was. And we all like Diontae Johnson a lot more than Adam Thielen at this stage of their respective careers. And so I think Bryce Young will be better under Dave Canales as well, year 2 in the league. So Diontae Johnson is somebody, again, because he is disappointed in fantasy for a couple of years relative to draft position, and because it's Carolina, I think people are going to be out on Diontae Johnson. I'm way in on him fantasy-wise because it's all be ugly production, but it still counts.
Yep. And also just someone about Diontae Johnson, on my fantasy team last year and needed him to go off against you in the playoffs. He was so close to like these multiple plays where it's like that was an inch away from a 60-yard touchdown.
Very fluky, yes.
I think that should just regress naturally. Also, the Panthers, they spent a lot of money on their offensive line, so that should be in a better spot as well.
A lot of AFC North talk today, and with that, let's show the AFC North odds courtesy of our friends at DraftKings. As this is pretty even at the top. The Ravens plus 115, the Bengals plus 165 to win the division. Jerry, are you surprised by the Browns being that far down?
I am.
I'm surprised it's that big of a gap. Plus 600 for the Browns. The Steelers at plus 850. I don't think anyone's shocked by that number.
I'm surprised. I think you could make an argument the Browns should be favored over the Bengals. Again, I guess it's all up to Joe Burrow's health, but like
these are quarterback based completely when you look at them.
Yeah.
We just don't know what Deshaun Watson is. At the same time, the Browns were extremely banged up on defense and still had the best defense in the NFL along with Baltimore. So I agree. They should be more bunched up. I think if you like Pittsburgh to win at plus 850, just go bet Mike Tomlin Coach of the Year at 3 times that price, because Mike Tomlin wins the best division in football with Russell Wilson as his quarterback or Justin Fields. That's a pretty strong Coach of the Year case. And then the only thing I would say is that...
and they would be able to keep Coach of the Year in that division.
Yes.
In case anyone... Kevin Stefanski won last year. I don't know if people are aware of that.
Yes. To remind the good people.
He did. And also, again,
not everyone knows it. Not everyone knows it. Some people forget it.
But what people do know is that Mike Tomlin has never won that award, despite being an all-time great. I will say one thing with the Bengals in relation to the Ravens is, one, the Ravens lost a ton of guys in free agency, and then two, just schedule-wise, I think we forget this, but the Bengals finished last in the division last year. They still have Joe Burrow on the team, and they get to play a fourth-place schedule with Joe Burrow. And here's why that matters. The Bengals, their 3 extra games, Panthers, Patriots, Titans. Ravens.
Almost layups.
The Ravens, their 3 extra games, Bills, Texans, Bucks. Just that difference, that is worth 1 just extra win for the Bengals. So if you think those teams are neck and neck, then you have to have the Bengals with a higher win total just by virtue of that difference. So that would be the one thing I'd keep in mind.
DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NBA, and this season, new customers can get $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Let's close out with some free agency hate headlined by Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert. Just this offseason, Matthew, he has lost Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett. They have brought in, and this is the most Harbaugh player list ever, Gus Edwards, 2 tight ends in Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst, and center Bradley Bozeman.
Yeah, by the way, and what he also gained was he gained Jim Harbaugh as a coach. We just talked about this with Gus Edwards. They are going to be one of, if not the most run-heavy team in the NFL. I think Jim Harbaugh is a hell of a coach, and they're going to play good defense, and they're going to run the hell out of the ball. And so I think it is great. If you are a Chargers fan, this is great. If you are a manager that has Justin Herbert on your dynasty team, this is awful news, because he ain't chucking it. He ain't chucking it. First off, even when he does throw, who's he throwing to? But the fact of the matter is they're not going to throw. Herbert is going to be a much better real-life NFL quarterback than he will be fantasy option. I think you can make a strong argument that Herbert should not be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year.
Yep.
Which is crazy to think about when you think about his skill level.
Yep. Herbert's been a trendy kind of sleeper for MVP because, new coach, team should be better. I don't think he's going to win MVP because how's he going to get the stats? He's just going to have people to throw to. And they're going to run the ball a ton. So, yeah, I think if you're looking for sleeper picks, I would stay away from Justin Herbert for MVP.
Yeah.
Both Titans running backs make the hate list here, Jay. Tony Pollard, the newly signed Pollard, got $10.5 million guaranteed. Tajay Spears, who we really liked last year, in for year 2. But it feels like these guys, their work is going to eat at each other. It's going to be a split share.
That's the thing. If there's just one of them on the team, obviously they'd be on the love list. But the fact that they're 2 and they're guys with, 1, Spears now has a bit of pedigree and showed a lot last year. 2, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard was, potential ride or die candidate for you going into the season because of what we expected from him. And he got paid, and they're both going to get, I think, a pretty even share of work. This probably is the backfield that is the cleanest 50-50 split in the NFL, I would think. And so they're going to provide fantasy value and be startable, I think, in deeper leagues, but I don't think you feel great about either of them.
But again, just think about he goes from hate is all about what happened, right? And so Tony Pollard goes from being the main guy on one of the best offenses in the NFL to being in a committee on one of the what at the moment we expect to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And maybe they're middle of the pack. Again, we just talked about it with Will Levis. Like, they're adding the offensive line. They're adding some more weapons. It's second year. Bill Callahan's there, so that should be good run blocking. But still, from the Cowboys to the Titans is a downgrade. From having to compete with Rico Dowdle for touches to now having to compete with Tajay Spears, that's a downgrade. Tony Pollard makes the hate list.
Yep. I said deeper leagues. Tony Pollard's going to be startable in every league. Like, he's still going to be a guy that you can roll out there, but I think the thought is that if Pollard lands in the right spot, then maybe he could be a guy who's a legit RB1, and I don't think he has that ceiling of Tajay.
You'd feel a lot better if Pollard had been re-signed by the Cowboys, or if he'd gone to Houston, for example, instead of Joe Mixon, that kind of thing. But yeah, on Tennessee, splitting time with Tajay Spears, who we really like. So, Pollard was not good last year. Among qualified running backs in fantasy points per touch, Tony Pollard was 45th. That's not good.
No.
That means, I'm going to break this down for everyone at home. They were on a fantasy points per touch among qualified running backs. There were 44 running backs better than Tony Pollard last year. That's not good.
Yep.
No one's out there going to give me running back 45.
Yeah. It's kind of mathematical analysis Matthew brought to Bet the Edge. That's why he's part of the universe.
Return
Part of the
guest.
universe.
What is it? One of
Part
the
of the
stars.
MCU.
Yes.
One of the stars of
Yes.
Bet the Edge. Matthew, I know you like.
BTEU.
I know
Part
you
of
like
the,
both these players in Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler.
BTECU. It's the BTECU.
The
Bet the Edge Cinematic Universe. Yeah.
Makes sense. Coming
BTECU.
Coming to IMAX near you. You can watch Bet the Edge at 6 a.m. on IMAX every morning.
Yeah.
The lead into Dune 2.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get you in the sphere. Let's get that you and Drew up in the sphere.
Next up on the hate list, two players you really like in Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, but together, kind of a little bit of a mess. And this team needs to rebuild their offensive line, by the way, as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big area of need. Everyone's so focused on the Commanders and what they're doing at quarterback, rightfully so. But the offensive line is also a massive area of need here. And so Robinson and Eckler, two of my favorite players in real life, they're splitting time on an offense that, the jury's still out on what Cliff Kingsbury is going to be able to do with a rookie quarterback, and we'll see in the offensive line. So certainly Brian Robinson went from a situation where he was going to be the main guy with Antonio Gibson moving on to New England, and Austin Eckler, who was the main guy in Los Angeles, and now the two of them are splitting a backfield. Certainly Robinson, who we'd hoped would get more passing game work this year, that's not going to happen with Eckler in town. And Eckler, who got all the touchdown equity the last couple of years with the Chargers, obviously that's not going to happen now with Brian Robinson, who's likely to get the early down work and, of course, the goal to go work as well. As you see Eckler's jersey behind me, we're going to have to update that. We got Eckler's number 30 for the Bolts. Proud Fantasy Life investor, Austin Eckler. Beloved commander for life now, Austin Eckler. But fantasy value-wise, it's down for both B-Rob and Eck.
Another running back on the hate list, Jay. DeAndre Swift got the big money deal from the Bears in the first 2 hours of free agency, $15.3 million guaranteed. But how much of the focal point will Swift be in an offense that has a lot of talent right now and a lot of mouths to feed in the backfield?
Yeah, it's also not clear he's the best or even the second best running back on the team. I mean, he was fine in Philadelphia, but pretty underwhelming after that massive game he had early against the Vikings in week 2. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the team will be throwing as well. How much do you think Caleb Williams will get him involved in the passing?
There's no training wheels with Caleb Williams. He's good in and outside the pocket. He's a full field reader. He's got a quick release. Like, this isn't a guy that you're saying, oh, we need to let you drop back 15 times a game because you're a rookie. This offense is ready to throw.
Well, sure. And by the way, in college, he didn't throw a ton to the running back well, right? And so DeAndre Swift last year, 10% target share in 2023. That was the lowest of his career. It's really weird because DeAndre Swift, when he was in Detroit, was like he was this pass-catching running back. Yeah. And now they go to Philadelphia and they use him completely differently than how he was used in Detroit. But the fact is it's hard for you to see a clear path for him having passing game usage with the Bears when you consider you've got Herbert and Roschon Johnson there. Last year, 3 different Bears running backs got at least 110 touches. And so Caleb Williams, who at least traditionally has not dumped off to the running back, he's got other weapons, obviously, in the passing game. And so, the pro or Swift argument is, hey, he got paid. He's going to be the lead running back on what we expect to be a good offense. But the anti-argument is like, you've got 2 other competent guys there. They've got a lot of mouths to feed, and he may not have passing game usage. So Swift is probably going to be a better real-life NFL player than fantasy asset this year with the Bears. But so certainly going from Philadelphia, where he was kind of the main guy, to Chicago, where it looks like he's the head of a committee, downgrade for DeAndre Swift's fantasy value.
Kind of a funny one here, Matthew, with the Vikings. Hate lists for Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, their wide receivers, but you love it for Sam Darnold. You don't love that they get Sam Darnold, but you love for Sam Darnold that he has them.
Again, it's all about what their fantasy value was prior to these moves. Sam Darnold was backing up Brock Purdy in San Francisco, wasn't going to get anywhere near the field, barring an injury. Now, and we expect Minnesota to draft a guy, and there's that whoever that person, if they move up to draft J.J. McCarthy, McCarthy's probably starting day one. But as we sit here today, Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings in a fantasy-friendly offense with the great guys to throw to. So his fantasy value is certainly better than it was backing up Brock Purdy in San Francisco. But going from Kirk Cousins to Sam Darnold is a downgrade for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. More targets available with KJ Osborne moving on to New England. Okay, fine. Justin Jefferson's still a wide receiver 1. You're still drafting him high. But for a guy that was the consensus number 1 pick in fantasy football last year with Kirk Cousins under center, you don't feel as good about Jefferson this year off of a season where he had a major injury and now has Sam Darnold and or a rookie throwing to him. And same with Jordan Addison as well. Like, it's a down, whoever their quarterback is, it's going to be a downgrade from Kirk Cousins last year. There's no question. Cousins played very well last year.
Yeah, I think with Jefferson, it just makes him a lot more high variance of a player because there could be games where Darnold just melts and he goes 4 for 36. Now, Jefferson also put up some monster games with Nick Mullins where the team is probably just going to be worse and they're going to be playing from behind more often, and Jefferson could just have these insane stat lines, but there's not going to be the stability week to week or the high floor.
I mean, it just... Weeks 1 through 8 with Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson was the 3rd best wide receiver in fantasy on a points per game basis. Without Kirk Cousins, starting in week 9, he was wide receiver 8 on a points per game basis. Again, he's still a wide receiver 1. He's still somebody you're going to draft high, but that's probably about right, by the way. He's, he goes from a top 3 guy to like a borderline top 10 guy,
One last wide receiver on the hate list here, Calvin
Addison,
Ridley.
obviously, by the way, Addison from wide receiver 13 to wide receiver 43. Yes. With Cousins,
well,
without
he's the
Cousins.
guy, really, because Jefferson's always going to get his to a
Yes.
degree, but Addison may not.
Right.
KJ Osborne going back, 2nd year in the league for Addison. I still like Addison skill-wise, but there's no question this is a downgrade for him in a bigger way than it is for Jefferson.
Calvin Ridley makes the hate list. Similar situation, right? This is great for Will Levis. How good is it for Calvin Ridley? He gets the 4-year contract, $50 million guaranteed. And how pass happy will this offense really be in Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen. Like, we don't know what kind of offense Brian Callahan's going to play. We don't know how good Will Levis is going to be. Yeah, I mean, like last year they were a very conservative offense, but awful offensive line, teams falling around apart. We have no idea on Will Levis. Again, I personally root for the kid, but talent we just don't know. And so, going from whatever you think of Will Levis, I think it's fair to say that this next year, he's likely not as good as Trevor Lawrence was last year, even though it was a somewhat down year for Lawrence. So it's a quarterback downgrade. It's an offense downgrade. I don't think the Titans will be as pass happy as the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. Remember, the Titans 30th in pass attempts last year. Jacksonville was 6th. And even if we expect the Titans to throw more under Brian Callahan, it's hard to see them getting up into the top 6. So less volume for Calvin Ridley. I would argue just as much target competition. Like, he was competing with Christian Kirk and Evan Engram. Now he's competing with Treylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins and Chigakonkwo. Ridley's the number 1 there, but it's not like there's no one else there in Tennessee.
And the running backs can catch the ball.
Correct.
In Pollard and Spears, they'll be involved. One more on the hate list here, Jay. Cole Kmet, who's a really good player in his own right. The Bears just have more pass-catching talent now with Keenan Allen in the fold and DeAndre Swift in the fold.
I mean, a lot of Cole Kmet's value historically been is there's just no one else to throw to, and he has to be the guy, and he was pretty much the entire of the middle of the field of their offense. And now you have Keenan Allen, who runs a lot of tight end type of routes. You have DJ Moore, obviously, who does a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage as well with the shorter stuff. So yeah, there's just there's just a lot of guys there now, and you'd expect that Cole Kmet. I mean, is he going to be draftable?
I know, and by the way, also Gerald Everett's there. And I mean,
good.
again, not that Gerald Everett is but if Gerald Everett takes 20 red zone targets over the course of a year away from Kmet, that's big.
They might draft Rome Odunze at 9.
I mean, that's
not
right.
off the table.
Right. I mean, so I think Kmet is a really good NFL player, but in terms of he was a volume-based tight end in fantasy last year, and I don't think he gets the volume this year based on all the moves the Bears have made. So, unfortunately, Cole Kmet makes the hate list.
There you go. I was waiting for that.
There we go.
I was going to do it, but I
Perfect way for the show to end.
Yes.
There you go.
End.
It's closing time.
Rankings next week.
Rankings next week on Monday. All the free agency moves. Check those out for free on Rotoworld.com. Of course, Connor Rogers, all of his rankings are up. His draft rankings.
Yes, big board, mock drafts, whatever to feed your appetite for the NFL draft.
Check it out. Connor Rogers got all his stuff on Rotoworld.com. And you can go listen to Bet the Edge or not. It's closing time.
At the
For
Sphere.
Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.